What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Apartment 113 podcast, where we talk with cool folks in the cannabis and psychedelics industry to learn about their projects and celebrate their successes. My name is Rob Sanchez, and this is episode 20. We're joined today by DiAnA McElroy. She's the CEO of Higher High Cannabis Marketing and Patient Advocacy. After getting her start in the industry at an MSO in the Northeast, she's created Higher High to educate communities on cannabis and help patients find the approach that works best for them. Connect with DiAnA on LinkedIn to find out more about Higher High and enjoy the show. DiAnA, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Yes, it's great to have you on and have a little bit longer conversation. I think in Benzinga or at Benzinga, Miami, we passed very briefly at the cocktail hour.
There was a lot of passing. There was a lot of conversations at Benzinga.
Yeah. What did you think about Benzinga, Miami? I guess overall, we'll dive into that a little further later too.
Yep. I actually really enjoyed the experience. I thought it was of all the conferences I've been to, it was definitely one of the most unique ones. And you definitely felt like that's where all the financial decisions were being made.
Definitely some movers and shakers in the room, some decision makers kind of walking in the halls and things like that. I'd agree there.
Yeah.
The different cannabis conferences can take a different spin sometimes. And I think that was very much on the investor, C-level leadership side of the industry. So it was a really enjoyable conference to walk, kind of good people around every corner, right?
Yes, 100%. The only thing that I will say they got points off is I did not expect hurricane storms.
It was basically raining the whole time.
It was. And it was my first time in Miami, and I was like, oh. But I did get one sunny day, and it's amazing if you get sun after clouds, how you appreciate it more.
Yes. Did you stick around a little bit longer to see the sun pop out there that Wednesday or the next day?
I did. I actually had patted myself one extra day and really saw and appreciated the town for what it was. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's kind of what I saw on the Uber ride home. Like, man, I should come back here if it's going to be sunny.
Yep.
It was basically a Seattle the whole time we were there for Benzinga, Miami.
See, it's funny. Every time I've been to Seattle, I've seen Mount Rainier. So I've gone with good luck.
Okay. You're the one they need to bring when they're tired of that rainy weather.
Yes.
So how did you find yourself needing to go to Benzinga? I think if we rewind the clock all the way back, where was your entry to the cannabis space? I saw that you had some involvement with Terra Ascend a few years back.
So it's funny, my entry into, and I have to apologize, I did a relay race with my daughter yesterday, and we were screaming too loud.
Oh, hey. Did you guys win?
No, but we had a lot of fun.
That's the important part. There you
go. So in 2018, I started noticing that my smart friends, my CEO, CFO friends were smoking cannabis again, and I started like poking around asking like, we're doing this. We're not doing cigars or bourbon and why are you consuming? And most of them, I'm 50, I'm outing myself. I turned 50 this year. We're utilizing for health benefits. They were no longer looking to get high.
So their responses weren't like, oh, I'm just trying to unwind, or I just need something to take the edge off. It's more, I've got a pain or an anxiety.
A lot of migraines, a lot of sleep issues, pain to your point. And so I started poking around. I had been a stay-at-home mom for a number of years, and that kind of set me back on my career path. People don't value as much when you do charitable work as if you get paid for it. So the capitalist bend on resumes, kind of unfortunate. But shout out to stay-at-home moms, doing the good work for us. Thank you. It was definitely a time that I valued, and I'm glad that I did it. But, it did take a hit on my career. So I started looking around, and cannabis kept circling back. And at the time, we only had 6 licenses in New Jersey. So it wasn't like a dispensary was easy to get to. But a couple of friends that had medical cards took me on tours. And I got to see what it was like and the products that they were getting. I'll tell you, I was so paranoid that I had a friend of mine who offered me product. and I wouldn't take it in the car with me. Like I was very much like a stigmatized housewife, but yet interested.
Yeah, so really had to
Someone
kind
said
of
to me,
shake that kind of old norm, right?
yes, and it took me, I mean, it took me years, I will admit. Like it took me like years to get comfortable to be around the product, to be around, back when I smoked and consumed in high school, it's because my friends were dealers, but it was a different lifestyle. We were young,
More
get
hanging out,
busted,
yeah.
whatever. Like, yeah, like it's a different feel. All of a sudden, when you're an adult, you're more conscious of like, I have kids, I have a mortgage, I can't have anything like jack my life. Um, but someone sent me an article that a cultivation site was coming into my town. And being the nosy Karen I am, I went to the meeting and just listened to what the executives from Canada had to say. And they, I still remember the girl who gave the presentation. She was like this badass who understood the industry from seed to sale. And she was talking about it, and she was so impassioned that when they left, I followed them and asked if they were going to be hiring. And they hired me virtually on the spot as a consultant.
Wow, okay. So that's just, it was the beginning and the middle of the
Yes.
story right there at the same time. That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that's Terra Ascend that came down from Canada to start a North American operation. That was their first, maybe their
Yes.
first branch down here.
That was there. We were brand spanking new. So for a year, I would go to all the towns that surrounded the cultivation site and just listen to what the opposition was to the product, to the site coming in. I'm very familiar with all the towns because I've always just been very involved teaching yoga or mom's club or different organizations. So and then we would listen to their concerns and how are we going to educate and how we're going to teach what the industry really means versus what people's idea of it was. And then once they had literally seeds in the ground, I was one of the first 10 employees at the cultivation site, which was really exciting because this was a new industry, it was a new product coming in. We had
Yes,
been awarded,
right.
yeah.
Kind of rare to get a new crop or a new agricultural industry in these days, It's
Yes.
pretty much all been tried and tested.
100%, 100%.
So you got a
And
chance to mix soil and really get down into the
I didn't mix
the
soil, but I
cultivation.
did get to trim. I did get to post harvest, help with post harvest. I did get to the drying rooms, hanging.
Oh, that's
I mean,
great.
yeah,
Yep.
our first harvest, we all walked out of there smelling like weed so bad. It was not even funny. Like
Right.
for days, everything I had worn, my purse, my shoes, my car, and then you
At
learn.
a certain point, it doesn't quite wash out either.
I learned that. I learned that. Yeah.
When I
Leather
first
really,
started
really likes
cultivating
it.
there in Colorado, it was before the days of scrubs. And as much as I hate to say this, we were in there in our street clothes and sometimes even shoes from the street. That is definitely not healthy for the facility, but we were there, and man, that stuff just permeates. I would wash my clothes and then the roommates would wash their clothes and be like, "Man, could you try to shake your clothes out first or something beforehand?" It's like, I'm telling you, there's nothing to shake out. It's like,
Yep. It's that
it's
oil.
absorbed it.
Yes, it's that oil, that stickiness. I mean, you're on your arms all the way. It's quite interesting. I actually had to run an errand that first week after work, and I saw all the people in line turning around and looking because they could smell weed.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I look,
Yep.
I just look like a regular mom, and they're looking at me like, I'm pretty sure that smell's coming from you, but you don't look the type.
Not quite putting the dots together. Yeah.
Exactly. And everyone's like sniffing the air. I'm like, yeah, it's me. I'm like, it's permeating off of my body.
Yeah, I think the one experience I had like that too is was pulled over coming home from the grow, and I rolled my window down for the cop, and I was just like, I mean, I was reeking. It was bad. I was just coming from harvest, and he was just stood back from the car and was like, "Oh, tell me that you're working in a grow here in the city, please." It's just like, yes, here's my agent ID card, and he was very cool about it, but it was an eye opener for sure.
Oh,
And I think a
100%.
glimpse at like a change in I think the overall like perspective too, because the cops in Denver at that time already were open-minded and, you know, smelling that coming out of the car, they didn't jump to action. It was more like, okay, well, there's definitely something for you to explain.
Yeah. Let's ask questions. Well, to your point, I would always carry my ID because my entire car smelled like it. My kids got used to it.
Oh man,
At the time, my 9-year-old was like, "That's what weed smells like." I'm like, "Yes."
Kind of skunky.
Yes, exactly. I actually made this is how stigmatized my entire area was, including my family. When I got the job, my husband and I would have these little talks about the industry, and we realized that we were throwing terms around that had not been in our home prior, like weed, like, marijuana. And we're like, maybe we should clue the kids in so they're not like, what are mom and dad talking about? And we sat them down, and my little one started crying because everything she had heard at school was all this bad stuff, and it was kind of like, oh wow,
seeing the stigma through a child's perspective as well. Yeah,
yes,
that's something else. I think definitely feels like a good move to bring that transparency to your household, though. If you'll be speaking about those kinds of things, or you have that business now in your life, I think that's kind of the last frontier for some folks in the cannabis industry. And
100%.
there may not be a perfect way to do it. My daughter is still too young to hear any of the conversation or kind of know really what we're doing, other than if we're holding her the right way or not.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I think that's still something I need to figure out in the long term too. But I feel like I'd like to move towards that level of transparency where this is the job for your family. It's fine.
And it's funny. So, I had a friend over for dinner, and it was the first time. He's a younger gentleman, and it was the first time someone was around my kids going, "Man, I got so high! I got so high!" He was talking about our trip together for MJ Biz. He was my wing person from Jersey, and
Okay.
he's sitting there. My husband and I are like slightly cringing, but then afterwards we talked about it, and we're like, the kids have heard adults saying, "Oh, I was so wasted," and we're like, we need to not normalize it, but like it's not taboo anymore. It's like, yes, he's an adult. He's allowed to get high. He had fun. He was telling a funny story. So even that like is this part of culture of like, how come our kids hear about drinking but they haven't heard about consumption?
Yeah, you almost get that forbidden fruit effect if you don't mention it.
Oh,
You don't
100%.
want to keep try or you're kid yourself that you're hiding it when in reality they're going to find out, but then without your guidance. So I think it's maybe a good move for sure there.
And I talk to my kids about the fact that, like, listen, same as alcohol, you're not of the age yet to consume. If you had a medical condition, that's different. But if you're not allowed to drive yet, there's many. It's called adulting. You're not allowed to do certain things that adults. I can swear, and I swear I've given myself permission at 50 to swear like a truck driver because it comes naturally living in New Jersey. So like, I swear. You can't swear. It's like breaking down the normality of it, but also putting in some restrictions.
Working it into the regular parenting, regular timing of everything, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
think by your daughter, you have a girl.
Yes, yep.
Okay, so by the time your daughter, it's going to be such a norm. Like, I look at kids from California, they're so much more accustomed to it than our kids.
Right.
But it's coming. The dial is opening.
And I grew up in Kansas, so Kansas will come after New Jersey is like California.
Yeah. And I grew up very, Catholic, Eastern European, the vodka can be on the table, but yeah, God forbid, the devil leaf. Like, it was, yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's, I grew up German Catholic in Kansas, so I had a little bit of that experience too. Not as traditionally German, unfortunately. I wish I could have learned some of the language, but I don't think anyone was still speaking there in the ancestry.
No,
So
yeah, go ahead.
from Terra Ascend, you put on your cultivator gloves. I love that. I think it's the greatest way to get into the industry and to really see the plants growing and understand like what's at the end of this, because a lot of the marketing and the supply chain, the licensing, the compliance, everything like obfuscates the beauty of this plant just growing naturally and kind of being created. And I think it's always wonderful to start on that side, or at least have an idea of the cultivator's plight, of the work that they're doing here, you know, for us all. As I work in the software space, which is definitely disconnected from cultivation now, but I'm thankful for my ties there to the cultivation side, to just understand kind of the effort, right? The energy that's going into cannabis. Was it a surprise for you to see a full facility operating?
Hold on, because I lost you for a second. Are you there?
Yep. Was it? Was it?
Yes.
Oh, all good there. Yeah, I was asking if it was kind of an eye opener to see the facility fully operational, or if it ramped up slowly enough that it didn't feel like jumping into the deep end.
You know what? It didn't feel like jumping into the deep end because we started at a smaller scale and then started ramping up. So it felt like a natural progression. And like I said, being there with the very first plants, you kind of, you know, you watch it unfold, and it was a beautiful thing. I mean, our head cultivator was the most passionate person I'd ever met. And you know, we hired and onboarded 80 kids in 4 months, and really it was their passion for the plant. It was their passion for, you know, the industry. I was coming in it as an adult, interested in the capital side of it, if I could out myself and be honest. And they were coming in to it very organically because they were such fans of the product. I didn't become a patient till I was already in the industry.
Kind of had to convince you a little.
Well, not convince me. Like, I kind of fell into it. It was like this normal progression where part of my community engagement was going out and teaching people the benefits and hosting webinars. We were doing this all during COVID on, you know, the health benefits, and you know, we had our pharmacist from Pennsylvania giving classes, and that's kind of how I destigmatized my kids too. Is, you know, I would have these webinars and turn the volume up because we live in a small house. So they had to hear these patients and these doctors talking about it. And it wasn't my voice. It was someone else's voice. And, you know, the more I opened myself up, the more people were coming and saying, by the way, my child has cancer and has been utilizing cannabis. And I was like, wow, you know, you're a cop. Like that
Right.
surprises me. And it started like taking the negative out for me. And then one day in the middle of the night, I was like, oh my God, I can't sleep again. And I started looking at recommending doctors and realized that my primary doctor was a recommending doctor, but yet he had never suggested cannabis to me. He was like willing to write me every prescription because I'm in perimenopause and I'm not sleeping, or I wasn't sleeping. And he was like, you know, try this. And I was like, I called him the next day and I'm like, yo, doc, like, why not recommend that to me? Because he was stigmatized. He believed in it,
So
but he wasn't.
he was pulling from his pharmaceutical list first, huh? Unless you brought it up.
Exactly. You know, so it was opening up that conversation. And that's how I became a patient. Is, you know, kind of like looking around, going, huh, these other people are getting benefit. Why aren't I leaning in?
Yeah. Did you find some benefit there in sleep or in able to get some more rest?
I did, and I found other benefits that like I hadn't planned on. I lost weight on cannabis. I tend to be one of those people that like I get revved when I prefer flower.
Kind of feel a little pumped up or a little energized.
Yes.
Kind of ready to clean the house or get up and
Yes.
move.
Yes. And I started fine tuning which strains were best for me and how, you know, and I became very diligent. Our pharmacist always said, slow and low, you know, journal, make sure you write down what works for you and what time of day and how you're utilizing. And I really started doing that. And, like I have ADHD, self-diagnosed, but at 50, no one really diagnosed us back then. And so, you know, you were forced to just sit there and put up with. Now cannabis like allows me to like, you know what, everything else can wait. I could write for a couple hours.
Kind of set the target, focus on it a little bit, set another one without seeing all the future.
Exactly. And it's nice. It's like, you know, So yes, I found a lot of benefits. I found the benefit of
That's great.
clarity, creativity. Yeah. And I microdose here and there, and it just, and I talk about it openly because I think there's so many people that can benefit from it.
Yeah. Microdosing psilocybin, lysergic acid, or THC.
THC.
Okay,
And
I didn't know if we were going down a different
no.
rabbit hole.
Not yet. I am on a subcommittee here in New Jersey for psilocybin. With
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yes, so I do believe in the health benefits of, I've traveled in the past and enjoyed it, and I always say that my days back having fun are probably one of the reasons I'm a happier person than some of my contemporaries.
Yes. Yeah, that'll do it. Right. Have some fun in your youth. Exercise
Yes.
your legs and your mind a little bit, and
Yes.
settle in for the long haul.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that that therapeutic approach is definitely the right way to approach cannabis, the right way to think about it. I think sometimes I don't like to see the industry expanding so quickly into new states without a lot of that therapeutic backing, because the population of those states is just gung-ho, ready to smoke. They are after a high. They want to try this product. But in that group of people, there's still, therapeutic needs. There's patience in that group that I think it's hard to look at cannabis like alcohol and just say it's, treat yourself, basically. Have a drink if you want one, or don't, or, it can creep up on you and like take over some of your attention span. It can cost a lot, right? There's some different issues there on the therapy side, but journaling alongside and going low and slow, music to my ears. I think that's perfect, right? Being able to introspect and kind of understand where it's taking you, and realizing that just such a small amount still takes you there, or still has an effect, I think is a big deal too, as the industry at times, which can be fun, of course, is all about, mass consumption. Like, let's smoke another one, and yeah, I was so high, man, taking bong rips and dabs and all this. It's fine, I think, and you can't say that that's not fun when you're with a group of friends or with the industry. But then when I'm at my house here, with a young daughter or with a family, that's definitely not how I'm approaching cannabis, right? It's not realistic to think about it that way.
And I think that's where, the health benefits, whether you're using it, and I don't like the word recreational, I like the word adulting. If you're, adult use cannabis, you're still getting the medical benefits. And so why not tune into them? Why not think about, how do I feel when I'm high? How does it, how does my body, how does my brain, am I more productive? How do I feel the next day? Do I have a hangover? Those are the things to consider, and talk about more and more openly, because to your point, I think so many people could benefit after work. I always say, cannabis gives me that, one glass of wine effect, right? You want that one glass of wine, but the problem is that one glass of wine doesn't really last very long. So then you have second, third, and the next day you're like, holy crap. I went from wanting to feel good to I feel terrible.
Right, to feeling groggy. Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't have time for that in my real life.
That's true too. Yeah, the cannabis is definitely fast on that front.
Yeah.
Do you think that your background with yoga and more mindful practices contributed to your approach with cannabis? I think that sometimes it's easier said than done to ask folks to be more introspective, or ask for that awareness about a product, or behind therapeutic use or connoisseurship kind of appreciation. It's hard to explain that, to someone new to the space, or maybe new to appreciating products that way.
I think the fact that I have that ability, again, the summer of my 19th summer, I was not beholden to anyone. I did a lot of experimenting. So I think the fact that I was able to experiment and came out of it, and I already had a foot in the door in the past, so I wasn't as afraid. And I think I'm just a naturally curious person. So if you tell me that like you're having benefits, I will ask like, well, what kind and where, and where what kind of products. So it just became this like natural evolution of like, oh, there's so many different forms of consumption. There's so many different terpenes. There's so many, like there was layer upon layer upon layer to learn. And I think that's why I became so, enthralled in the industry. I mean, my company just hosted our second conference at my alma mater, Fairleigh Dickinson University,
So,
all
yeah.
on the ancillary opportunities. Last year's conference, we had the vice chair of the CRC speak, and it was funny because when him and I had sat down to like, well, DiAnA, what do you want me to talk about? I had asked him to be a keynote speaker, and I was like, well, talk about all the like ancillary opportunities. And he's like what? And I laid them out. Like there's, from real estate to marketing to printing to like there's so many industries that could touch upon. I'm very much not plant touching, never mind the health benefits.
Yes, yeah. And so how did you bridge then to your company, Higher High? Where did that really get started? Did you leave Terra Ascend and then kind of go back to the drawing board to see how you wanted to approach the industry, or was this kind of growing as an idea during your time there?
No, it wasn't growing as an idea. So when I parted ways with Terra Ascend, I was kind of like, I really want to stay within the industry, and how do I fit in? And it's taken me, I mean, my company will be 2 years old this August, and it's taken me a while to like figure out my niche and where I fit in. I'm definitely a patient advocate. That just comes naturally for me. And then, the health and wellness aspect is just something that has always called me in. So that's where I want to take Higher High. But no, it kind of came out of necessity of like, how do I keep my foot in the door? And I didn't really know what I was doing. A friend of mine said, pick a name for your company. He was a lawyer. He's like, I'm going to start an LLC for you. And
Cool. Yeah, you just got the ball rolling.
and people in the industry, like, I don't know if you know Tony Gallo from Sapphire or Art Hans from Hans Construction, but they're like the big boys in New Jersey. They were like, DiAnA, go to MJ Biz, go to MJ Biz. So I went to MJ Biz, and my old LinkedIn picture had a picture of me holding a pot plant, and I just walked around going, hi, I am New Jersey. I am Jersey. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm really saying, but I just know that like I don't want to be like out of the industry yet, and I want to keep,
Yeah, that's
learning.
solid.
Yeah.
And I can definitely relate to that. I was extremely plant touching to begin with, making hash, growing, mixing up soil, everything on that side. And then actually the cost of living in Denver was skyrocketing with the cannabis industry, and with Denver just blowing up as a kind of a spot to move in the Midwest. So I couldn't afford to live there anymore and just fell back on my college career in tech and went back to software companies, built products for staffing agencies, and just kind of went back to the IT world. And it was after a few years that I found the cross section of cannabis software and the space that I was already working in, which is called ERPs, which basically manages inventory and manufacturing and kind of things like that for very boring, necessary industries like making doorknobs or
Yeah.
like windshields, really odd things. So these actually pair beautifully over to the cannabis space. And that's where I've been the last few years as an ancillary service in building software and kind of coming at the industry that way. So it's very easy to look past all of the ancillary services that make the industry work and to only focus on these licensed operators. But if the licensed operators were acting in a vacuum, they would be lost. It really relies on all of these other businesses doing odds and ends for the folks. I mean, even like cash counting machines, that's a business, that's an ancillary. Accountants have become some of my favorite folks in the cannabis industry, bringing their knowledge and like confidence in the numbers and in the business workings, trying to bring the cannabis minded folks to appreciate that. It seems like there's been a balancing act, a seesaw of more legit non-cannabis ancillary services coming in, and then trying to partner with someone that maybe got a lot of success from being early and being well backed, or having that ambition to just start as soon as possible. Connecting the dots has always been fun. I've had users that didn't have an email address, and I was teaching them how to use the software. So it's across the board, I think, needed. That conference that you ran sounds excellent, though. You said it was at your alma mater?
Yes, so this was our second one. It's called the Cannapreneur Conference, and
Okay.
this year, it's a way. I went to my alma mater years ago because I was being trained as community outreach and as someone who's doing training for the new employees from our pharmacist in Pennsylvania, because the Pennsylvania market, we started off as just a medical market here in New Jersey in 2019, and she was teaching us on the terpenes, the entourage effect, the homostasis, everything, the endocannabinoid system, and I became excited and went to FDU and said, "Hey, you guys have a pharmacy school? This is really critical information, So started engaging with them, and the conferences are a way to bring validity to the industry and talk about it. This year was last year was laying out how we got to the legal market. So we had people from the legacy, we had people from the legislature, we had people from, medical cannabis advocates and activists. And this year we built on the history to so now some of these people already have licenses. Let's talk to how business is going, how the evolution is happening,
Kind of checking in with the folks from the first round.
Yeah, actually we had all new speakers, but just how is the industry growing? Next year it's probably going to be even bigger and more in depth, because now we're talking more and more about psychedelics too. How is that
Right.
intersection coming in? Has there been any more research done? I think that's the biggest thing. Hopefully we get deschedulized. That's not going to happen, or but research is needed in this industry. And how do we get to the right ears to say, hey, patients are benefiting, but there's not going to be validity in the industry unless we have some stakeholders who understand how much benefit they're getting, So it's that kind of conversation I like to start.
Yeah. And was your approach with Higher High initially to start a conference, or did that evolve kind of naturally as well as you were doing some of the networking and kind of made your way to BizCon to see did you kind of see what the industry turnout was like first, and then want to bring that home essentially?
So it was kind of a mixed part of both. There was a business school within Fairleigh who was very excited about the industry, and they took it upon themselves to say, hey, we wanted to partner with you and hire you to curate this event for us. And I was like, that's awesome, because this is totally in my wheelhouse. Event
Awesome.
curation and years of PTA event planning years of event planning, is it's second hat to me. So, and then I just happened to have networked for so many years, having worked for an MSO in the state, kind of opened doors, because when you're one of the first 12 license holders, everyone wants to talk to you. And as community engagement, everyone is introducing themselves to you. So I had made some really good contacts, some really good networking, and was able to invite people in on stage and, showcase the industry in a more adult fashion. Let's get away from, the stigma of what it is. These are business people,
Right. I think that's important to call out, and to try to bring especially some schools on board to show students maybe what they could be learning or what they could angle their learning towards. At Kansas State, where I went, I wrote a paper at one point in psychobiology about using cannabis to treat Alzheimer's, and my professor was very discouraging, and she said that cannabis is not legal and don't write this, don't get involved in that. But on the flip side, if that would have been 10 years later, I was trying to go into academia for biology, and I was very afraid of Alzheimer's. So finding that there was a potential solution, I probably would have stayed in school and kept working and went to a lab and just gotten involved in that instead of be kind of discouraged initially. So I think bringing the industry to students and showing them, the potential future they have in the space is awesome, because it is a new industry. It's very hard to find that across all other verticals, from agriculture to tech. I mean, tech obviously has new things more. That's like one of your innovative spaces. But for cannabis, that requires, like you were saying on the ancillary side, distribution, packaging, machine making, everything in between that any college educated or anybody who wanted to have a profession in that side of the industry wouldn't have to even be plant touching or consume themselves to have a very successful lifestyle.
100%. And it's funny because I was thinking about this earlier. So we are in this country, like we had gone away from kids being pushed towards having any kind of jobs that involved manual labor, right? That was the 80s were like, money, money, money. You got to work in an office. You got to wear a suit. And generationally, people are getting more and more turned off of that, right? They don't want that lifestyle. They don't want that. And cannabis is a different culture. It's a different lifestyle. But it's also an agricultural plant. And if you don't get, and I call them kids because I feel like I've earned that right this year. If you don't get these kids excited about something, they're not going to want to pursue anything. And cannabis is one of those like industries that really gets young people excited because they like the idea of it. They like the culture of it. They like the community. And then, they like the products. Some of them don't. They just want to be part of the scene.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It becomes an old driving force in and of itself.
And also you have a robust industry and you have a robust economy based on something that unites people. And like I said, the generational differences of how it's perceived is like dramatic to me because, working with the 20-year-olds, it opened my eyes to like, wow, you guys are so much more okay with it than I had not become. I used to be okay with it. And then I was like, oh, no, not, yeah.
Had to kind of step in line then and realizing that everyone else was running off on the side still.
Yeah. This, I'll tell you, and like Jersey has been a really fun dial to watch, even within my own neighborhood, because when I outed myself, there were, some Karens who
Some opinions, huh?
Yes,
some neighborhood opinions.
Some neighborhood opinions, and honestly, I was like, am I going to look bad as a mom? Am I going to look bad as a business owner, and more people would whisper behind my back, like, love what you're doing. I fully support you. And I was like, okay, which gave
Give you a little
courage.
thumbs up as you leave.
Yeah. And the first person who, when I outed that I was in this industry, we're opening a dispensary. We opened 2 dispensaries at the time that I was working. The first person that contacted me was someone that worked for the school. And she contacted me on the side and said, I am suffering so bad from arthritis. Do you think this could help me? You know what? Let's meet at the dispensary. Because that's another thing is like people have a hard time walking into a dispensary because there's such a stigma behind it. So sometimes they just call me and like, will you just come in with me? I'm like, sure. And
just need a little peace of mind or a little bit of an anchor. They can always turn to you and ask any questions or
exactly, or just destigmatize it for myself. Like open the door and they get destigmatized by like, oh, okay, she's a functioning member of society and thriving and whatnot. And ask the right questions and then I really promote them to like share with a friend. If you've had positive benefits, share with a friend. Don't keep it to yourself. You don't have to be as open about it as I am, where I'm all over social media. But think about the benefits you've had and see if someone else could reap the rewards of consuming cannabis.
Yes, yeah, and some folks who've been on pain meds for a decade or so are just not aware of the the progress they could make without those medicines, maybe still not be pain-free, because obviously some things maybe cannot be fully treated, but you can reduce that or start to help some pain or move away from pharmaceuticals with some cannabis products. And speaking as not as someone who's not a doctor or a pharmacist, so please talk to yours if you're considering.
Oh yeah, that's my
anything,
number one. My number one recommendation to people is two things: be open-minded, talk to your medical professional, and then proceed from there. I have a friend. I'll tell you, she was just like literally this month diagnosed with cancer, and she said to me, "Do you think cannabis could help me?" And I said, "Start with your doctor first. Start with your doctor. Find a doctor that would be open to it being part of the protocol." To your point, I'm not a medical professional. I never claim to be one. All I say is I found benefits. I know many people who also have. So be open to that conversation.
Right.
Bring it up to your doctor, because they're not going to bring it up to you. You have to bring
that's
it
a
up
good
to them.
point.
Yeah,
because they're not going to tread that water and chance losing your business permanently.
Exactly. And sometimes they're really surprised by their doctor's response. But again, same with my primary, it had to be me going, "Hey doc, like, is this something?" Well, yeah.
Opening the conversation. Yeah.
Yes, that's all it is. I've done a Canna Curious conference at the local library, and I was surprised because people came. Some of them came to there was a couple that came to just judge me. And I was
they just wanted to make sure you knew that they didn't approve.
Exactly. But you know what? By the end of the 2-hour session, we left friends, and every single person, I don't care how closed off you are, every single person has a cannabis story, and 9 out of 10 times it's something positive. You just forget in the recesses of your mind that, oh, wait, I do have a story, and maybe it wasn't a negative thing.
Right. It's definitely a good product on that front, in that most of the folks who have consumed or are part of the scene, there's a sense of community, a sense of wanting to share this thing that we love or that we found. I think that's not found in all vices or pharmaceutical solutions. You wouldn't find necessarily communities of people that are just loving and trying to spread the word on XYZ from the pharmacist. So I think that's something unique about the plant, bringing that kind of legacy feel or that grassroots feel, and being accepting for anyone coming towards it, from a lifetime of no cannabis. Seeing the Missouri cannabis industry come online, there are a lot of folks living in the suburbs sprinkled around Kansas City who may used to have consumed, or maybe they have been clandestinely the last few decades. But still, it's probably a big step for them to even go into a dispensary there, because of the vibes of how life has been.
Oh yeah, and and then when they do, I'll give you another thing that I've learned from here in New Jersey. So we went to adult use, right? We went from a medical market where, to your point, I kind of liked the way we rolled out, because it was like a slow roll. Where there was time to have conversations. It hasn't been perfect, but then adult use, and people go out, they get their gummies, they pop them midday, and then they jack their day and they go, "Oh, it's bad." And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. You wouldn't drink tequila midday. Why would you pop a gummy that you haven't tried prior? Do you know what you took? Do you understand how it's going to hit you? Do you understand the length of time? Do you understand? Nope. None of that. So even going and having the good PR after the fact is important, because
to kind of put that right narrative, put that spin on the story, make sure they understand what they just experienced.
And make sure that they understand that it was end user error.
Right, true.
Don't give the product a bad name. I'm sorry, I'm going to use my jersey, but fucker, you misused it. What made you think that on a nice Monday to pop without having tried it prior,
Right. You could have this at 11 a.m. and you're mad that you were asleep or anxious at 2 now.
Yes.
Well, that's the wrong time to try something brand new.
And understand, and then understand how to utilize, it's not all alcohol is the same, right? Like tequila and vodka and beer and wine, it doesn't hit the body the same. Like, and I use the alcohol analogy because it's one that's very common for people. So
it's just an easier way to like have that analog, right? Like
yes.
you could, having a social beer is much different than slamming 3 or 4 tequila shots in the
yes.
next 15 minutes.
I've never done a keg stand. Okay. I've also never dabbed. Like that's just not me.
We can try to solve at least one of those next time next time you come to BizCon.
Well, that's funny because I did go to a huge consumption party, my first BizCon, and I walked up to the dab bar and I look and I'm watching, and I had seen it done before in New Jersey, and I go, I've never dabbed, and the guy goes, don't do it here. I'm like, I like
that's
you.
not the right time to try it.
Exactly. But he was so honest. He's like, now's not the time. I'm like, I had no plan to, but I like the fact that you're being honest instead of like, yeah, just do it.
I've never seen anything silence people the way a dab could at the wrong time or when they're not ready for it. It's just emotion gone. You know, they're inside their head for a little bit, trying to work through the details.
And you need to be, and that's a really good analogy. Like you need to have that conversation prior that like,
you understand your mindset. Like this is how it happens.
Exactly. Go into it knowing is better than, not understanding what you're putting yourself into, because I think that does the anxiety, the fear factor, all that stuff that comes in with our brains, is important to like, when I've experimented with, psychedelics, I knew what I was going into. I understood like, okay, yeah.
Where if you were just suddenly under the influence of psychedelics, it would be like a straight anxiety attack.
100%. And that's the same, it's very, it's being mindful of the fact that like you're going to consume and this is what it's going to feel like,
Yes. There's even a part of that plays into what's called psychological determination, kind of having this mindset for this is why I'm doing this. So then after you do it, you get those benefits. I mean, it's not a direct one-to-one. Obviously you can't make some things up there and say, I'll be a millionaire after I smoke this. But you could at least say, I smoke this for focus. And you keep that in your mind. That way, when you smoke, you try to stay focused. And there is something definitely to that, or having knowing why you're after it.
Yeah.
I think
you consume and you go for a walk and you say, I'm going to tune in to Mother Nature. I'm going to become like more aware of Mother Nature. That's why I'm consuming. And it's that, and it just opens that like that little, I don't like a heady high personally. Cause I do
prefer more like in the body or kind of more relaxed.
Yes. I like like the very edge, and there's strains that will make me cry. They just invoke like a deep, like, weeping that I don't mind, but no one likes that at a party.
Yeah. You don't want to just start crying in the social circle there. What would be next then for Higher High with some of these conferences you're running locally, some of the plans that you've been laying out? I can see that you're building quite a network and starting to establish some regular occurring events. Is it more on the event space that you're finding some traction there, or would you like to still expand the more patient or business facing services?
So where I want to take Higher High is to do the educational portion, but I also am trying to build a lifestyle wellness brand because they really kind of go hand in hand with cannabis. I want to see if I could help other women my age who are going through perimenopause, menopause, and break down the stigma and like, hey, have you tried these products? Have you considered ever trying them? And here's why. I think I'm a good representative of the industry, as if I do say so myself. I don't think you're supposed to say that, but in that I speak honestly about the goods, the good and the bad. Like I think I don't always. I think we spoke about it earlier where people are like, yeah, just do it. Just do a dab midday. And I'm like, no, it's going to jack your life. And, let's talk about it responsibly. Let's talk about, I have strong rule about not driving impaired. That's not cool. Some people do not appreciate the fact that I talk about it, you know?
Yeah. There's still that education there around every state's rollout. You always wonder how the communities are going to take it, or how the state's really going to implement everything. And I think consulting groups or companies like Higher High that want to bring that education and try to turn some of the focus on therapy, or at least allow folks a doorway into the industry that wouldn't have just walked into the dispensary, is really a noble act, and hopefully really helping some folks find a solution for them, right? Find something to make them happier, right? Because that's just kind of the end goal.
Exactly. Find that joy, find that purpose. And it's not even, you're not going to find purpose from cannabis, but it's going to help unlock that part of your mindset potentially, that part of your mindset that, you don't think you can. And all of a sudden you take a hit and you're thinking about your life and you're like, why not? Why can't I? It's got that
it can kind of clear some obstacles.
Exactly. And I think the older we get, the more we forget that elasticity in our brain of allowing ourselves to think differently.
Yeah, always good to keep pushing the envelope there. And I've really enjoyed this conversation with you today, DiAnA. I just wanted to thank you again for hopping on the show. I'm hoping I can meet you here at BizCon this year. And if you come down for Cannabis Conference, which is also going on in Vegas, I'll be walking the floor on that one as well. Where can our listeners find more about you and Higher High?
They could definitely find me on LinkedIn, DiAnA McElroy with the capital A's, part of my trademark, and also info.hirehigh@gmail.com if they want to email.
As the industry picks up speed in New Jersey, it'll be cool to check in maybe and see really how things have changed.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, thank you, DiAnA.
Thank you for listening to the Apartment 113 podcast. For more information about the show and our range of services, visit apt113.com. We offer cannabis operations consulting, agile product management, and connoisseurship services. With over a decade of experience in the cannabis industry, Apartment 113 is here to help.